share a few thoughts about how AI is transforming legacy tools, legacy software, and I think you'll hear a lot of this during the day. And I'm also here to meet many of you and to learn more about how you're using AI in your businesses. So just a brief recap in terms of how the progression of AI has been. I think classical machine learning has been around for a long time. We've used many sort of early sort of models, and it started with Bayesian and then progressed to neural nets. And we had some success with using more data. And I think largely the progression has been in line with the explosion of data and how do we manipulate more data to kind of drive the intelligence from those. Initially, the use cases were more around classification, basic image recognition, and so on, and then we progressed to facial recognition, and then now we're doing more and more generation as well. So I think most of you are familiar with this. But specifically, I think one of the key things that I want to focus on is, while we all understand that AI is going to change software, how we use software, and how we apply it in business scenarios, one large piece of this opportunity is essentially being able to change existing tools landscape much faster. So what I mean by that is enterprises are much more willing to try out newer pieces of software, newer solutions, and the pace of adoption of this change is likely to be more like 5 to 10 percentage points, which we have not seen before in sort of the legacy software SaaS sort of markets. And this is a very interesting opportunity for all startups, all companies building in AI. So why is there, I mean, tech has always been the promise of doing things faster, better, cheaper, and more efficient processes, etc. But why is there a shift from what we considered efficient not too long back? Even today, many of the SaaS tools don't have some of these aspects in place, and that's the real opportunity. One is, of course, with the growing data, the kind of insights that you can drive, there aren't enough concrete ways or in static dashboards, which is there in most SaaS applications today, to be able to react fast to just the pace of data explosion and the kind of insights that you can drive from those. And when you make it more actionable, so today, software is interactable, so you can actually implement many of these things through your workflows. And the promise of those two coming together is better achieved using AI in terms of predictions, in terms of RCA, anomaly detection, being able to find out concrete nuggets of information that you can actually act upon and then interact with other systems to make that possible. Second, of course, I think most of us with ChatGPT and so on have realized the pleasure of just asking a question and getting an answer. But in business, unfortunately, in most scenarios, we all work with software where we cannot ask questions, right? So, and it's not easy to ask the question as well as to get the answer and then work on what you want out of it. So I think the interface evolution also has to keep in pace with what's possible today with AI. And that is a demand, growing demand, as we'll talk more about it in terms of what enterprises are doing in terms of their attitude and approach to adopting AI. The third part is a lot of applications are still in creating their own data silos, right? So they have their own data stores. They manipulate a specific set of data in the organization. But you don't get the kind of insights that you need to unless you actually integrate data from a whole host of other sources, which can be both internal to the enterprise as well as external public sources. And the last is, of course, this is an ongoing thing. We moved from static 2-tier to 3-tier to microservices, and this evolution is just going to continue. And these are some of the reasons why we are seeing a big shift. So where is the real opportunity? I think already talked about some of these aspects, but essentially the ability to handle data at a much bigger scale, to be able to search through it, to be able to understand, mine insights from it, and use that for business processes, right? And that is the real opportunity. The second opportunity is sort of contrarian to that is, we've been using software to do things more efficiently than we do as people, right? So a large part of our processes even in organizations today are driven by people interactions, making decisions, and so forth. Now, how do you try to do this with the same reliability, same efficiency, but without any manual intervention? And that is a big opportunity. And more often than not, it's a very constrained use case, very constrained data that you have to work with within an enterprise, within specific to that process, specific to that people. And a lot of that can be done today, right? So and that is a big opportunity. And of course, more larger, where there are bigger enterprises, standard SOPs, standard processes, across industries, same sort of processes can be completely automated. So how would this change things? I mean, these are just a few examples of new age applications which are embracing AI. And most of you may have used one or more of these. And some of the capabilities like Notion does, is summarization, text generation. Zapier, of course, just provides plugins for easier integration and to be able to do newer workflows. Travel, and in terms of itinerary creation, personalization, and Canva, of course, beautiful designs, generating text, generating images, and so forth. And also, legacy solutions are integrating AI in a big way. And these are just, again, few examples. In enterprise applications, ERP, CRM world, you have Salesforce, Einstein. You have in our commerce kind of applications where you have anything from product description to image cataloging, generation of images. You don't need expensive photo shoots anymore, generation of videos and so forth. Newer experiences, immersive experiences, and ability to generate those. And of course, productivity is a big, because anything we do, we are trying to automate. That could be individual things that we do, or collectively as teams what we do. And of course, we have teams in Microsoft, and what developers are using with GitHub and so forth. And also in entertainment, in game development, media creation, and so forth. So I think it's more an order of the day that these solutions have to integrate these capabilities. And what does all this sort of lead to, and what is the sort of outlook in terms of industry spending? And it's a massive market, right? So I think broader software is the biggest market. Native sort of Gen AI-focused solutions is a massive market. And with the ease of making products and software in general, even insourcing or building teams internally to quickly build applications that your business needs, this is slated to become, again, a 2 to 4% sort of growth in this, which was not traditionally possible. I mean, most things were traditionally outsourced, and India relies especially a lot on the services market for software. But a lot of this will also start going in-house with the ease of development. So I think this sort of is a McKinsey reference, is essentially how the penetration of this has taken much lesser time than how SaaS itself took shape, right? So we are seeing a 3x sort of growth in a similar period of time with AI being adopted at a large scale. And that reflects in the spend, but what is driving it is really this intent. If you talk to any executive, any enterprise in the largest market, in the US, for instance, most of them have this as one of their top priorities, and they're planning to spend if they're not already spending, right? So this is a perfect chaos. I mean, chaos is a ladder in terms of, you have intent to invest in these new age solutions, and you have a little bit of chaos because these solutions are not yet mature, right? So this is perfect for, especially startups who want to rapidly innovate and capture market. So a little bit of dive down into specific areas which are large in themselves. Of course, we've talked about CRM, ERP, but I think very exciting is, how is IT services going to take shape with all that's happening? And of course, the dev tools themselves to build software. So I think a large part of legacy service players who have the customer relationships, who can now achieve the same outcomes for their customers with 1/10 or 1/5 of the number of people required, will now start to will be forced to think about replacing per seat revenue with a sort of license revenue. And this, again, is a huge opportunity in terms of go-to-market, since India traditionally has many service players, and companies building products can think of going behind a large part of the market with some effective partnerships in this area. And media and entertainment we've talked about. Cybersecurity is, again, very interesting. So I think we are starting to see, and here it's not just Gen AI, a lot of ML applications on the edge in terms of OT infrastructure, a lot of endpoint devices being created with IoT sensors, and there is a huge opportunity there to just be able to build systems that can prevent threats, prevent vulnerabilities, and there's a lack of standardization. Again, there is, wherever there's a lack of standardization, whether it's in how data is represented, how a process is run, or just in disparity of systems, AI solutions can do a great job there because you're looking at it from a pan process viewpoint or a pan organization viewpoint. So I'll spend some time on talking through specific opportunities in a little bit more detail. So I think it starts with how is software going to be developed and where AI can play a role in that. So I think through the entire cycle, of course, this is more the waterfall representation, but essentially from your analysis of what are the requirements that your software has to build in. There's a lot of data today. There are a lot of apps already built. And the whole point of using all this data is to sort of leapfrog and not repeat the same mistakes and be able to build more efficiently. So when you're thinking of a requirement, have you captured all the edge cases? Have you captured all the exceptions? Have you looked at all the competition out there? How are they building a similar use case or different use cases that you did not think through? And that's the opportunity in just the requirements phase. In terms of design, again, you have a wealth of apps, 500,000 plus apps, which are very popular around the world today. And can you use that? Can you use the design principles behind that? Can you use the components that are used in that? Can you use the user flows and the user journeys that are built into that to kind of build more effectively and not start from scratch and build? So that can lead to generating how you generate wireframes, how you generate entire design systems. And there are companies, startups building in each of these areas. Development, of course, code generation, there's a lot of promise, but I think there's good momentum in very specific use cases. I think one of the common threads with most of these startups here or otherwise are they're just taking one small use case and then trying to build out, because these are very big problems. So if you were to think about mortgage processing in the US, for instance, still largely on legacy systems, and even mainframe systems, and Java-based systems, and so on, not even microservices-based. And they do a lot of analytics, and they have a lot of data. So that's a huge opportunity in terms of saying, can I move this code across to a microservices architecture just using simple AI techniques, right, and code generation. So I think the more specific the use case, the better it is from an entry standpoint. Testing, of course, in terms of end-to-end UI, we're still using tools like Silk and other means of UI automation, which don't understand from every interaction. Someone runs through a UI flow from end to, and then how do you monitor it and how do you address anomalies? How can you address real-time threats or some microservice going down because of scaling issues, performance? I was talking recently to a startup which is focusing on just only Kubernetes deployment scalability and the issues around that. And there are hundreds of issues, well documented in forums. Can you build an effective AI solution that looks at your environment, looks at the potential issues, looks at the cascade in production, and warns you ahead of time, and even remediates to some extent, right? So those are all, real opportunities in terms of development. And I think it's largely industry agnostic and very horizontal. I mean, even industries which have not yet digitized fully, as an example, take something like construction or manufacturing, for instance. A lot of process is manual driven. For instance, monitoring how much of a construction project is actually complete, project management for that. can you use visual inspection? Can you use recordings, videos, and go deeper in terms of infrared and so on, and understand the materials, understand the defects in the construction, and actually build out your entire as-is, whereas project status, as an example, right? So there are companies building in that space as well. So while it's pan-industry, just taken a couple of examples to kind of drill in deeper. Media, because I think all of us consume content, and we see the effect of AI today in social media and feeds that we consume and so forth. Huge opportunity, again, across the board, whether it's in image-based, video-based, specific to industries like film industry. How do you actually dub today? How do you translate? I mean, today, still most movies, for instance, are translated, are dubbed, and don't have the final end product experience for non-native speakers, right? That happens within India as well. We have so many languages that we have that within India as well. But is it possible today to conceive of a movie that you make in one language, which works seamlessly, the video as well, and the lip sync and everything, that works seamlessly across other languages? And then gaming, of course, is massive. If you look at, I mean, there are too many opportunities within that as well. For instance, Unity or Unreal, their WebGL experience sucks, right? So it's not very seamless rendering in devices that you and I use on a daily basis. Similarly, the tool itself has become so complex, some of these tools, that they need someone who understands that tool to be able to implement even the smallest thing there. So can a conversational layer help? Can automating repeat tasks help in such tools to make game development itself easier? So the health side is, again, very interesting because AI in itself can do almost the end-to-end job. If you're talking about imaging diagnosis or multimodal diagnostics, including protein assays and blood and different inputs, it's very hard today to even track so much data as an individual doctor or a specialist surgeon or a radiologist to kind of understand the overall impact and provide the right diagnosis for the patient. And we've seen tremendous success already. There are over 800 AI vendors in just imaging who have their software listed, and many of them have gotten FDA approvals in the US, right? And Cure from India is one such example. And similarly, in terms of how the healthcare process itself works, right? So how can you automate that? How can you ensure data privacy and regulatory compliance when you do all that in a regulated industry like health becomes an additional challenge. So, I mean, some of these solutions come with newer challenges in terms of what are the guardrails we build, what are the constraints we build, and pharma, of course, in terms of research and doing clinical trials and so forth. I think a lot can be done in terms of doing something that we're doing today more efficiently, better, faster, cheaper. But there are also newer opportunities that are coming up where entirely new use cases can be built from scratch, which could not have been possible earlier. So I'll give you one example, again, in marketing, which is, again, a horizontal function. So brands, a lot of brands, global brands, still do focus groups, consumer studies, and once they launch, it takes them a cycle to even collect back data on how the brand is performing, right? And it's very expensive as well. And today, the pace at which you're expected to innovate in terms of product, you cannot wait for 2 quarters before you know what really happened with my brand. Did the launch go through? Did my campaigns work the way I wanted them to actually work? Did the value prop reach the users, or are they actually not understanding what this is about? And so much data is available, contrarily, on social media, on the internet, in forums. And you don't need to do this. You don't need to spend the same amount of money, and you can process this data and have an entire report generated specific to the brand within a few minutes or within a few days at most, in terms of processing it with internal and external data sources, and say whether, which parameter are you doing better, is your pricing okay, and all of those facets, right? So I think there are opportunities, like I said, across multiple industries and across functions. So these are a few investments that we have in our portfolio. It's an active area of interest for us. And we're looking at product development. We're looking at how AI is transforming services. We're looking at vertical AI in specific to domains. So how will this sort of evolve? I mean, I just heard the last few bits of what Hemant was talking about as well, is, these agentic plays that we keep talking about. So essentially, I want to do a job. I have a function within a company, and I'm doing it in a certain way today. And with data, with the power of AI, how can I do this better? And we are very early in this evolution, right? So we're talking about, for instance, GitHub Copilot can check your code and suggest how to change certain things. And there is efficiency improvements of 35 to 40% plus. There are things that can check your output and so forth. So it's more a Copilot mode. But we're also ready in some cases where it's very constrained, very easy to replicate, and we have enough data to train those models where we can say, you can take over the process, right? Just do this end to end and give me, for instance, this presentation. I'm hoping that, as an example, can be put together with just a few prompts, right? So I think this is where we're going, and how fast will we do this in each function and each process is going to evolve. I don't think it's going to be someone else was asking about why is AI suddenly such a big thing? Is something changed that everything will be automated too fast or whatever? I think it's going to be step functions in each area, in each domain, each process. So how will this change things? I think we already talked about it. Ability to, if you have the data, if you understand the human process, and if you understand the organization, how it works, and you understand the industry, then you're able to correlate the data and provide the right insights, tweak the process even, and execute it end to end, because a lot of this data resides in other systems that you can integrate with. So this, I think, is the sort of future paradigm that we're going towards, where on the one side you have modern applications. We talked about some of the challenges here where the interface itself could become more intuitive. And on the other side, these applications are in turn going to interact with agents of intelligence, which can do these tasks or workflows end to end. So a lot of open questions, and I think some of the startups here as well as around the world are trying to figure out how to build these effectively, where to focus, which is the problem which an AI-first approach will merit enough resource, versus which is a problem where it's going to be a heavy, difficult fight to replace incumbents because the incremental value that you provide is not sufficient. Apart from the product itself, how do you price these solutions? What is the business model? Is something that needs to evolve. I think, from simple token-based, usage-based to kind of how do you capture the value that you're actually deriving from these solutions, right? So if you're able to drive outcomes, cost side is usually easier to understand. If you're able to reduce my workforce by 30%, then how much am I willing to pay for that? Versus something where it has an organizational impact, where it makes life of multiple stakeholders efficient, and hence drives better business outcomes, even better revenue outcomes, it becomes tougher to capture that value. And stakeholders, again, typically you have one ICP, one org, one function that you want to sell to, and then you figure out what's the best strategy to sell to them. Now with more data interplay, with more workflow interplay, you have multiple stakeholders that are going to be impacted, right, in the organization. So what is the effective sales process? Who am I selling to? And then, of course, the legacy problem, which keeps repeating almost every 5 years. We deploy a lot of things in production, and then we say that we need to move all of these or integrate all of these and make sense of all of these. And can you effectively do that? So these are some final thoughts in terms of how a startup specifically or a new division, new product within a large company should think about this. It starts with the data, really. So what is the long-term advantage that you can build here, right? So if you don't have very deep data understanding, which in that specific domain, for that specific process, you cannot build a deep solution that's going to last. I mean, it's the space, the fifth point is really around how fast you're innovating. That's also mandatory because pretty much it becomes easy with all these development tools coming out to actually build an equivalent solution. I was talking to another interesting startup which was saying that a lot of prompt-based AI deployments today are suffering from once I deploy in production, within 2 months my accuracy is falling. Because A, the engines themselves, underlying engines are changing, and B, the prompts are no longer as effective in terms of delivering the results. So a company is actually building an evaluation framework for just prompts and how to refine your prompts in production, right? So this is an ongoing, this is going to be a very fast-moving, ongoing task. And provided you have some moat in terms of data, focus and say that, while these large models can solve for a certain level of information and insights, I'm going to do really well in this particular small constrained data set, right? So, which I have access to because of my customers, which I've trained effectively for. So I think how you focus and how you build IP, and of course the rest is pretty much the same in terms of choosing the right market and the ICP and how you sell and so forth. So these were some of the thoughts that I thought I'll share with you. Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Sampath.